ब्रह्मरूपमादिमध्यशेष सर्वभासकम् भावषट्कहीनरूपनित्यसत्यमद्वयम् वाङ्मनोति गोचरं च नेति नेति भावितम् तं नमामि देवदेव रामकृष्णेश्वरम्. Namaste to all. One of the greatest contributions of our culture to world thought and culture is the Catholicity, the universality of accepting different paths leading to the same goal. If you remember the words of Swamiji, he was telling that universal acceptance is the main nature, swabhava of our culture, of our spirituality, of our religion, and so on. What is that universality? It is basically the conviction that every one of us, whether we are human beings or living beings, or even the stones as such, the non-living beings, are progressing towards self-growth. We are all growing, whether we know it or not, whether we are aware of it or not, or whether we are aware of it, we are growing. Swami Vivekananda would give he gave this, expressed this thought. One of the listeners, he asked, "What about thieves and murderers?" Swamiji laughed and said, "They too are progressing. They too are doing what they do for getting something. And they think that they are getting something. But when they burn their hands, when they get caught, and probably whenever the repentance comes, they will change the direction. They are also growing, but the direction is different." Such Catholicity has given way to something wonderful in our culture. What is that? It accepts every person has this right, it's birthright to seek a goal of self-growth, to seek self-knowledge, or to seek realization, God realization. Swamiji's master would say that to know God, to understand Him, to feel Him is the goal of religion. Apparently, he was unschooled. Apparently, he was uneducated. But great people used to come and listen to him because he had practiced what he was teaching. Many of you, or most of you, may be knowing that he practiced different religions, different methods of practice in Hinduism itself, mantras, yoga. He has practiced everything and came to a conclusion that ultimately he reached the same goal. When this happens, what is our advantage? You take up any old book, not only the spiritual texts as such, but even the literature, our Sanskrit literature, our secular books. When Bharata Muni wrote that Natya Shastra, always the first shloka starts with a prayer, and that prayer ends with, "May this help me to reach my goal of self-realization. May it give me mukti." So any one of us, in fact, the greatest hindrance, if I may say so, is that I cannot do it. This is not for me. I am a Pamara. I am an ordinary man. I am a Grahastha. How can I practice all these things? In fact, this whole literature was written for everyone. And only thing is, we have our priorities, probably our responsibilities, our survival, our responsibilities. All these are making us or taking us away from this understanding. So take heart and Vasishta, Yoga Vasishta gives us so many different methods. The reason I started this discussion with this thought was, we started this Upashanti Prakarana. And intentionally, I'm only discussing one story at a time. For simple reason that each story gives us a methodology. And as most of you would have come to know now by this time, Yoga Vasishta happens to be a Jnana Shastra, which advocates self-inquiry. It guides people, but it says, as Sudhakar, but we have to know Yoga Vasishta, and he gives different methods of approaching this self-inquiry. In the first we saw Janaka, King Janaka, just by listening to some of the suggestions given by these Siddhas, when he heard these songs of Siddhas, he was driven inside. He went inside himself and he came to know about it, and he got realized. But that's not possible for all of us, or I would say very few people, maybe one in a million may be able to achieve such kind of thing just by listening. But ordinary that we are, we always start with certain starting point. And invariably you'll notice that starting point is where we are at the moment. What we see at the moment, what we perceive through our senses and understand the word at the moment. This is the grandeur of our scriptures. Don't worry about Janaka. It's only an ideal situation. Don't bother about Janaka's state, or don't bother about people who have Paramahansa state and all that. Don't bother about it. Now let's look at our own state. Let us try to understand where we are in. The second story was the story of two brothers, Punya and Pavan. Punya, as I had told you, is the person who has understood this Shastras intellectually, but he has also started practicing it. He practiced and he reached the goal. He achieved what was to be achieved through that self-inquiry. But Pavana remained at the level of theoretical level. Did not practice what he had heard. And consequently, what happened? When the father, the respected father, Dirgha Tapas passed away, this Punya was his normal self. He accepted his father's death as a natural course, and then he proceeded to finish all the funeral rituals and so on. But while Pavana, he roamed around the forest and he was lost. Almost, he was disturbed in mind. And when he was little calm, Punya started advising him. He reminded him. You see, this is what we are doing in all these sessions. Whenever you hear somebody, when you hear a discourse, what is it that you are doing? You are reminded. It reminds, it brings, they go out. They reach for earning their livelihood, their bread and butter. They say invariably in the Western countries, in the European countries, there is that superiority and inferiority. You see, we are all brown people. We are not black people, we are brown people. And brown and black is, looked down upon by the so-called white people. They may be white through skin, but they may be black inside. So when that happens repeatedly, these people start missing their home. And invariably, when you are away from home, you miss it most. The person who is dear to you, when he's far away, you miss him most. And that's what happens to the people who are working outside. It is said, one of the persons who was there, he was telling me that whenever I see an Indian, whenever I see an Asian, it may be Bangladeshi, it may be Pakistani, I suddenly get attracted to him and I run to him and then start talking to him. Why does it happen? They remind us, these people who are from our own country remind us of our country. And these Shastras, and whenever there are discourses, these discourses and the Shastras remind us of our homes, our real home. There's only one home. Every one of us goes there. So Punya reminded Pavana, and it is said that he too reached that state. Today, we will take up the story of Bali Chakravarti, Mahabali as he's called. And I'm sure that most of us or all of us in Kerala know Mahabali. Maveli, I think he's called as Maveli. He was the king, he was the emperor of this place. And according to Puranas, he was an invincible Asura king who had made the conquest of Swarga as well as Bhuloka, the human existence, the plane of human existence and the godly existence. And he didn't spare any effort to win these battles. And he had so much of wealth. He had so many objects of senses. He was enjoying. But then a time came when he started feeling, in spite of my conquest, in spite of my getting involved and indulged in the sense objects, why is it that I feel unfulfilled? Why is it something remains? The enjoyment doesn't give me any joy. Why is it? He started thinking about it, and then he noticed. You see, each part of each situation of Bali's atmosphere, mental atmosphere, is very important to us. Bali Chakravarti started feeling restless activity within his mind, and he wanted to do something all the time, obsessed with activity. And then suddenly he remembered there's something wrong with me. He just paused and noted that every day and day in and day out, he was involving in the same or similar activity throughout. Even the thoughts which were going on in his mind were repetitive. They were repeating. Suddenly he said that, what kind of existence is this? And that is the reason why, in spite of the fact that I change my objects, there's no joy, because there is repetition. Actually, he is in a state which some of us or many of us or most of us pass through. What is that state? It's the state of boredom. I had a friend, it was way back in the college. He passed through this stage, and I was fortunate enough to take notice of it. It so happened that suddenly one day it started. When we had gone for a walk, he said, no, I'm getting bored. Let me go back to the room. We thought that probably he was remembering the assignment, or he wanted to complete the work. That's why he would have gone. But this kept on repeating. Whenever he would come with us, or wherever he would go, if he's in the library, probably he'll brush through one book, then he'll keep it back. He'll take out other book. After brushing through or just glancing through 4 or 5 books, he'll say, "Poor dear." He'll go back. And the height was when we had gone to see a movie. It was an English movie, and it was an interesting movie. It was a war movie. Most of us liked that movie. I still remember that it was Dirty Dozen, the Second World War movie. And when we were enjoying, just after when the titles were over and the movie is about to start, he got up and he said, "Bored, मैं बाहर जा रहा हूँ," and then he went out. To this extent, we started calling him as his name was Motilal Dhar. We called him as Bore Dhar because all the time he would say bored. Fortunately, after some time it went off. It is a passing phase. Boredom was the starting point for Bali Chakravarti. When you are affluent in your life, when everything is available, and you start seeing through the process of your involvement and indulgence. Involvement means mental thoughts. All the time getting involved with the thoughts. Again, remember that mushtika. The thoughts are about grabbing something. The thoughts are about certain interests, certain desires, certain objects of senses. And they are trying to grab. So this outward activity is observed by these people. Now, I'm again something like, reminding all of us, reminding myself also, that these repetitive, why is it that we feel that they are repetitive? Because they last for a very short time. Whatever be the enjoyment or pain, both are there, or pain or enjoyment, pain or enjoyment, they last only for a short period and then they just pass off. This temporalness, this temporary fulfillment, this temporary joy or pleasure is seen by such people who get bored. There was an article way back in Reader's Digest, probably about 25 years back. It suggests that when children are getting bored, they say that they learn something. So if a child says that I'm bored, you allow him to get bored for some time because it's just a passing stage. They learn something. So Bali Chakravarti learned. What is it that he learned? He says it's repetitive and have to solve it. So it is said that he went to the topmost story of his palace, and it was a wonderful arena where he could see the mountains around and things like that. He sat there and started again thinking about the same thoughts. Suddenly, to his joy, he remembered the conversation which he had with his respected father. Bali, as many of you may know, that he was the son of Virochana, one more Asura king, who had also got enlightenment, who was also an enlightened king. This gives us one more thought to see. Even Asuras can get enlightened if they want. So he had gone and asked. Bali had asked his father. He said that why is it that I get feeling that we are repeating everything. It's repetitive. Our conquests, our wars, our enjoyments, they are all repetitive. Why is it that? And it's all passing. Is there anything which is beyond this change? Same question which Rama had asked. Is there anything which is permanent? Then he remembered. You see, it's a story within a story. They are all beautiful stories. Story within a story. Virochana said, listen to a story. He said, there is a kingdom. It's eternal. It's infinite, without any borders. The kingdom does not have any of the physical items that we see. It doesn't have rivers. It doesn't have lakes. It doesn't have mountains. It doesn't have vegetables. Without anything, it's a kingdom. And the king of that kingdom is Mahadyuti, great effulgence. He does not do anything. He's still all the time, but he knows. He's still Tushnim. He remains quiet, and without doing anything, things happen around him. These things that happen, these activities that happen around him are affected that is, are influenced by one of his most intelligent or efficient ministers. That minister is nothing but, even he is like a shadow to the king. I'll explain. I'll come to that. This was a story told by Virochana. These were the symbols which he gave. He is a shadow of the king. And without the king, he does not have any existence as such. But this minister is all powerful. He can do and undo things. And that's how it is stopped. He stops. Virochana. Bali says, I did not understand anything what you said. What do you mean by this kingdom without borders, infinite, eternal? And what do you exactly mean by the king? King means he has to do something without doing anything, by simply sitting. How is it able to look after the kingdom? It says, it's Virochana responds and says, the kingdom is the kingdom of mukti, liberation. And the king is the Atmic principle, Atman. And the minister is the mind or mind stuff, Antakarana. And he performs all his duties. He creates, he destroys, what are all the things that are happening are done by the mind, which does not have any separate existence as such. He exists because of the king. And Bali asks him, how do I conquer the minister? Because basically, Bali and people like him, Alexander the Great and all that, they know only conquest. How to conquer? How can I conquer the mind? And how can I be in audience with that king? That is Atman. Virochana smiles. He says, there is only one way. What is that? It's Vairagya. Vairagya is slowly and steadily separating yourself from the gross and slowly and entering the subtle. From Stula to Sukshma. Remember one thing, by the way, I'd like to add here. Always the Stula, the gross, wins over the Sukshma. Sukshma is so subtle that it gets, or it goes, it doesn't get destroyed, but it goes to the background very fast. Suppose there is a voice from within, or somebody is whispering to you in a, let us say, jam-packed auditorium where there is a lot of tumultuous noise, or in a, let us say, fair, in a marketplace where there's too much of noise. Everybody is shouting for their fare, to sell their fare. Will you hear it? Because the voice is so subtle, it cannot be heard. So this subtlety, this gross to subtle, always you have to stop the gross activity. You have to quieten the gross activity. Then only you will be able to perceive the soft. So he says, Vairagya is the process of going from outside to within. It is going inside from outside and from gross to the subtle. Having said this, Virochana remembers, yes, I remember, and for a short while, because the father was enlightened, when he had told him, he had given a glimpse, he had given a taste of that. Because whenever enlightened people are around you, or in front of you, or you are in front of them, they create some vibes which we receive. And as I was telling you, we remember our home. And probably for maybe a fraction of a second, all the senses and everything becomes quiet. So he had experience, he had a glimpse, and then he started proceeding. How did he proceed? He proceeded by keeping quiet. He made his body quiet. He stopped all the activities. Then he slowly and steadily stopped giving, you see this, how do you mean controlling the senses? How do you control the senses? You cannot, I mean, that is also, it's called as Shanmukhi Mudra and all that, they are there. But how do you really, without much effort, can you control the senses? It is by paying less attention to the senses. You make the body quiet, and invariably people ask you, preferably after keeping the body straight, back and head straight, neck straight, you close your eyes so that the visual, the stimuli, the visual information which comes through the eyes, at least that curtail that. And then slowly and steadily start paying attention to things which are normally going on and then proceed. That's how he started proceeding. But he had a problem. He was not able to proceed further. Up to a point he went, and then there was problem. It is said that he suddenly remembered his Guru Shukracharya, who was an enlightened person, who was as or probably sometimes more powerful than Guru. Guru was the Brahaspati was the Guru of gods, and Shukracharya was the Guru of Asuras. So it is said that Shukracharya appeared in front, and then he said, after paying obeisance to him, after worshipping the Guru, he asked the doubt. He says, I'm not able to proceed. What do I do? Here, Shukracharya gives one more suggestion which can be taken by us, and quite simply. It's not a very big suggestion that you should do tapascharya for that. It's only an attitude. Shukracharya, instead of giving directly the methodology of going inward, he said, the questioner who asked this question, questioner is pure jnana. The question which is asked is also pure jnana. The place where the questioner is sitting is also pure jnana. The person who is trying to solve or dissolve the question is also pure jnana. So there is no guru, no shishya. Contemplate on that, and then you'll get enlightened. Now people like us, you see, we'll have to make things. We'll have to understand from where we are. You see, unfortunately for us, the education these days, I mean, probably it's the time. And education these days concentrates only on me and mine. I and mine. I and mine. I have to become an engineer. I have to earn so much of living. I have to get married. I have to look after my parents. I have to look after my family, so on and so forth. It somehow or the other, the education is narrowing down. It narrows us down. Our attitude or our mind as such gets more and more narrow, more and more contracted. So it's giving an attitude of education. Become more Brihad, so that you'll be able to reach Brahman. You become expansive so that you'll become Brahman. Pure jnana is Brahman. Simple thing. We eat. Maybe some of us eat rice, some of us eat chapatis. When we are eating this chapati, to how many people are we connected? How many things are we connected? The land, the water, the farmer who toiled to get these grains of wheat or rice, paddy, the de-husking process, then it was brought to the mill. Just imagine the number of people involved in one single chapati or one morsel of rice which we eat. Aren't we connected? I don't say that we have to thank every one of them and all that, but well, at least thank the God, thank the Lord, or thank the providence that has made these things which I'm eating available to me. Be thankful to that providence. Be thankful to the things which you have. Get connected. You are already connected. Become aware of it. We see a rose, a beautiful rose. Isn't it connected with the sky simultaneously when its roots are in the ground? Isn't it connected with water principle, the dewdrops which are on the petal? Isn't it connected with the sky above? Isn't it connected with the sun? Because through sun rays, it gets the energy. We are all connected. Every one of us there is interdependence. So Shukracharya is telling your problem of boredom. See, he's not telling, but your problem of boredom started because you started becoming only self-indulgent. You started indulging in self and its worries and its indulgences and its problems as such. You get bored. I'm getting bored. I don't want something. I want to do something. I want to get something. So, as I was telling you about that aviator, Howard Hughes, is that all? You see, all the time, we want to do something, we want to gain something for myself. I mean, it's not for the community as such, it's for myself. So, Shukracharya is telling, expand your view. And as and when he started expanding, he says he got enlightened. You see, how far this Puranic story was a truth, a fact or not, we do not know. But I have I have a belief, I have a trust that all these things were there, but they were meant also for us to teach something. Now, Bali, what does Bali mean? Bali means sacrifice. Who is Virochana? Virochana is light principle. Virochana means sun, fire, basically something like light. So Bali is the son of light. Sacrifice comes from knowledge. Sacrifice comes from wisdom. And sacrifice it is said he was supposed to be such a wise and just king that whoever went to him, they never returned empty-handed, whatever was asked. And this quality, because he had become invincible, the gods approached Vishnu and said, "This is the one more story of Bali Chakravarti." They said that he has become invincible. Somehow or other, you control him. Vishnu takes the form of a Vamana, dwarf, and Brahmin boy, he goes there and asks for Diksha. So Bali is, he was fascinated by the form of Vishnu. And he asked, "What is it that you want?" He says, "I want 3 paces, 3 steps for myself." He says, "Is that all?" "No problem, I'll give you." Having promised, he says, "Is that a promise?" He said, "Yes, it's a promise." Then you pour that water, you give me arghya so that that promise is kept by you. He says, "Don't worry, I have always kept my promises." But he says, no, still you do that. And it is said that he gives arghya and So then he says, "I'll take my first step," Vamana said. And his first step was in the heavens. So he took that heaven for himself. Bali knew that, yes, he has been tricked, but he accepted it. The second step, he took this earth. And Bali, it is said, had only 2 planes. Says, what about the third? Bali, very, in all his grandeur, he was not a puny king, petty king. In all his grandeur, he said, "Place your foot on my head," and then it is settled. And it is said, it is believed here in Kerala, I think that's the belief, that before he was vanquished by Vamana, he said that you should give me permission every year to come and meet my praja, meet my people. He says, all right. And that's how Mavili, it is said that he visits Kerala, his country, every year during Onam season. Now, this is a story. These 3 steps are again, they mean something. Vamana is that which is the being as Angushta Matra. Vamana is a small Atman who resides within the heart of every one of us. He is the one who asks us to conquer the Swarga. Swarga means, what is Swarga? Swarga is the dwelling place of the gods. And do you know, every organ has a presiding deity. The eyes, the presiding deity is Surya. The ears, Vayu, and so on and so forth. So, Swarga he took. That is, he took the control of Swarga, control of Bhu, the material world. The material world was also taken by him. And the third one was Bali's Ahankara. Head represents Ahankara. And that's why, Ushne Shine, it is said in Rudra Prashna. Ushne Shine means that which is tied to the head. And this turban is a symbol of pride, of Ahankara. So head is Ahankara. The Ahankara is vanquished and the Bali gets enlightened. These are simple story, both these stories, but each one of them have wonderful suggestions to us. Now, as ordinary people, as people who are sadhakas, who have begun the journey, who have started putting the first steps in us, or maybe some of you have already started traveling, what should we do? Here a very beautiful suggestion is given by Virochana. Virochana says, and I would like to quote one very beautiful shloka from the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Bhagavad Gita says that you always control the grosser, that which is gross, with a subtler faculty of within you. It says, the shloka goes like this: Indriyanam paranyahu indriyebhya manasastu para buddhi manasastu para buddhi. I'll come to that. Indriyanam paranyahu. In the indriyas, senses are subtler than the body. Body is gross, senses are subtle. Indriyebhya param manah. Manas is subtler than the indriyas. Manasastu para buddhe. Buddhi, the intellect, is subtler than the manasas. Yo buddhe parasastu saha. Saha means he. It means the truth. Buddhi is also grosser compared to saha. He has given a methodology. How do you control? You cannot control the body. So what do? You, with the help of senses, that's what we do in meditation. We sit quietly. We control ourselves. We take a decision to meditate. Buddhi is also there employed. Buddhi is subtle. And this is how you control the body. How do you control the indriyas? You control through the mind, because without mind, you cannot perceive. Eyes are looking at something, but eyes don't see unless and until mind is there, manas is there. So with the help of manas, and how do you become aware of the manas? You quieten them. As Virochana said, quieten the senses, quieten the body, quieten the senses, quieten the mind, quieten the buddhi. You see, we have a simultaneous, now reminds me, I had heard somebody said, it's a beautiful thought. I think it's Swami Sarvapriyananji. He says that we have three powers. The mind, our mind has three powers, and it's a beautiful interpretation. The first power is it can decide, it can choose. Whenever we sit for meditation, what do? We choose to sit. We decide to sit for meditation. And that decision will come a long way in your effectiveness of meditation, your success in meditating. We have the power of choice. Second power is we have the power to focus. We are able to attend to a particular thing more intensely than the others. If we choose, the choice is there, we have chosen to meditate on something. Let us say that if you are meditating on the form of God, meditating on the name of God by mantra or something, meditating on the breath, meditating on the heartbeat, whatever be the object of meditation, it doesn't matter. You choose to meditate on that, and that choice, you are able to use it for focusing. You focus, you are able to focus because of the choice, you are able to focus. That's the second power. And third power is very, very important. He says, become expansive. The mind can become expansive. It can become petty, as these days most of our minds are. They can become petty, and they are petty as such. As J. Krishnamurti says so many times, he says that we have become petty, just as our gods have become petty, because he said the gods are our own creations. So we being petty, our gods are also petty, who become angry at us and things like that. So expand. You become unselfish. So these three powers can be used to control your mind, your emotions. And slowly and steadily, we can start learning to see our own selves. And once we start seeing him, then he who is inside you will help and give you help all the time, all the time. So let us try to focus on this. Let us learn to choose. Let us learn to focus. And let us learn, as Shukracharya said, let us learn to expand. Let us become Brihat. And so that we'll be able to achieve Brahman. And it's always the case that whenever we reach, we'll not be able to describe where we reach. Because it is said, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. He says, where the mind along with speech returns unable to tell, that's the place where we are going. In fact, it's not a place. That's where we belong. That's where we are all the time there. But we have forgotten amidst this so-called pandemonium, there's so much of tumultuous noise, so many priorities that we keep. They are all keeping us away from God. Sri Ramakrishna used to give a wonderful small sentence. He would say, God is always with us. He is ever with us. God is ever with us. It's only that we are not aware of his presence with us. And that's why we go away from him. And that's where all our problems are. Once you realize that he is with you, or rather, as Advaita or Yoga Vasishtha tells, once you realize that he are you and you are he, as Shukracharya said to Bali, that the questioner and the person who guides, the Guru and the Shishya, they are all pure jnana. Once we realize that, nothing can be said about it. But we can describe the paths which we are taking. They describe the small suggestions and which can be taken by us whenever we start doing the practice. So let us all get involved in the practice. And I hope that every one of us, including myself, we reach the home which is always with us. In fact, we are in the home, but we have forgotten it. Let us, that all these things will remind us to be who we are, where we are. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question actually. That we have to become more expanded. What is it actually? That is it like thinking that we everything is ourselves, or what is you mean actually?
Actually, as I was, yeah, I got your question. That is how to become expansive.
Yes.
Okay. You see, actually, all these things are known to us. Only thing is, I'm reminding you. What happens to you when you go to seashore? When you go and sit on the beach, what happens to you? You are looking at the sea. Don't you feel expansive? I mean, the whole sea as such, it's so huge, the water body which is in front of you. Whenever we are troubled, let me again get one more. Whenever we are troubled, what is it that we do? We look up. What are we looking at? We are looking at the sky. So the moment you see something, the mind, see, this is again advantage of that quality of grabbing. The mind tries to grab the sky. What happened to the mind? It became expansive. Okay, these are simple things. I think Kodungalur has a beach. Does it?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, or you?
I find many people when they visit Kanyakumari, at the first time, they are coming to Kanyakumari and they see they are wonderstruck. They just keep
Yes.
They forget that they are XYZ, and then they become so one with that. Oh, it's so much water, and as if it is the whole water is going to come and drench them. There is a feeling of awness. Similarly, people who go from down south to Kashmir, when they see that mountain, the ice-clad mountains, they are wonderstruck that there is an expansiveness that drops in.
I'll take up one more thing which happens to all of us, and I'm sure that every one of us has experienced. We see a person who's not fortunate as we are, who is in pain. We don't know that person, but we see him. Maybe we see a person who's suffering. Looking at that suffering, what happens to us? We feel, you feel sorry. Not for actually, you do not feel sorry for that person. For a moment, you have become that person. Isn't that expansive? That is why Swami Vivekananda said, service to man is worship to God. Why did he say that? Because he says he knows that he knew, and we also know that most of us are unable to meditate. These are all abstract things which we are discussing are abstract things, ahankara and manas and things like that. But we are discussing a shastra, so we have to do it. But Swami Vivekananda knew that there is plenty of opportunity for all of us to become expansive through the service, through feeling sorry for somebody, becoming compassionate. That karuna, the aspect of karuna is there. That karuna expands you. And once that happens, once you start learning it, that's why people who start giving something to people, Swami Vivekananda used to say, it's always the giver who is blessed and not the receiver. Receiver is giving the giver an opportunity to give. That is why whenever in our culture, whenever we give something to somebody, some brahmanas, we give some gift. At that time, we also give dakshina. It's called as dakshina. Maybe a small coin. We place a small on, the betel leaf. The betel leaf, we keep a small coin. Keep the supari also, the areca nut, and the 1 rupee coin. What do? We keep it and give it to him. It's dakshina. It is showing thankfulness to that person, because he could have refused. That person said, no, I don't accept gifts. So he could have refused. So for being thankful to him, that is, you are showing thankfulness to the person whom you are giving. Isn't that expansiveness? So, and there are plenty of opportunities. Let me recall a very beautiful episode in the life of J. Krishnamurti. It's written by this Pupul Jaikar, who writes about, it's in a biography, who describes this scene. it was in Uttakaman. They used to go and stay there. Krishnamurti used to love mountains. So when once he always used to take long walks. And it is said that he went on top of a hillock there and he stood. And when he looked down, he found two ladies carrying huge loads of firewood on their heads. And you can imagine when they are carrying a big load on their head, when they are climbing up, what happens is they are tired. And he said she was not looking at the women as such, but she saw Krishnamurti ji looking intensely at those people. And she says, as and when they started coming nearer to J. Krishnamurti, they started feeling, I mean, you could see the relief on the faces of these women. So she says, perhaps that compassion in him was so physical that it could give relief to the women. He didn't do anything as such. He did not give anything to them. He did not give any food to them. But just that Karunamayi, that showing that eye of Karuna can itself do so much of wonder. So we can become expansive all the time.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkhabhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.